Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm Kurt. This is the Vector W8 Garage, and I'd like to continue on today by going back into the interior of the car and covering some of the items in the interior, stereo system, HVAC system, some of the switches on the dash, etc., and give you guys an idea of what's in there, why, and what some of the costs associated with doing it were. And hopefully you'll enjoy today's episode. Thanks for coming back. So we'll go over some of the controls inside of the cockpit, some of the switches, buttons, etc., and show you what they're for and how the car is shifted, etc. So over here to the left of the driver, what you have is the shift lever. It's sunk down into the side panel over here. The way that this thing works is you lift it up, pull it back one notch for reverse, pull it back another notch for neutral, pull it back again, drops into drive, and then the way that you shift this is you pull it back 1, 2, 3, and then when you want to downshift 3, 2, 1. And it's meant to be a ratchet shifter. The car is fully capable of driving around in drive, but it's the equivalent of starting the car off in 8th gear, like you would a Bugatti Chiron, and starting it off in high gear and then idling away. Now you got to remember, this is above all a 366 cubic inch V8 in the back. That is a low compression V8. It's running 8.5 to 1 compression ratio. So if you take that engine without any boost, it's not making a tremendous amount of horsepower. So once you're up on boost with this thing, it makes a lot of power. But that's what the turbos are for, is to make all that boost and get this thing up on power. So when you look at the dash, what we've got over here is all of our lighting to your left. You've got parking lights, you've got your headlights, you've got your fog lights, you've got your driving lights, your interior lights, and then you've got an auxiliary button here. This auxiliary button is a spare slot in the panel so that you can add any type of lighting that you see fit as the owner of the car. If you want to add additional interior lighting, exterior lighting, etc., that is on a 20 amp aux, and it will handle any other lighting duties that you see fit to. Jerry wanted to have that available just in case these cars were ever tracked and if you needed additional lighting for that. Below that's the hazard switch. Up above it, what you've got here on the next panel is your coolant fan. This is capable of being manually operated, so you can push the coolant fan in and get yourself additional power. And that's because if you were sitting in traffic and you wanted the air conditioner working at its most efficient, you need airflow over the condenser in order to make that happen. So by kicking in the coolant fan manually, you could add additional cooling capacity out front and drop down the temperature of the AC system for a more consistent run. Otherwise, you were waiting for the fan to kick on out front as the radiator temperatures would rise and fall. So this gave the driver the ability to create additional comfort inside the car by kicking that fan on manually, and also if you were in a situation where you were in a dry heat, hot day, you could cool the car down by using that fan manually. You've got your cruise control down here at the bottom for these switches for enable, inhibit, engage up and engage down. You've got panel and display. You've got panel brightness. One of these controls just all the switches and how bright they illuminate. And the other one is display for the display brightness up and down. Over here you've got a dial. This is for the heads-up display. There was a heads-up display available at a pretty exorbitant cost. There were not any Vector W8 buyers who opted for the heads-up display due to the cost of the unit itself. When you're paying $448,000 for a car and you go and tack on the cost of that thing, you start jumping it up. There are quite a few options available for this car, and I can show you some of the options that were available. To the right hand side of the HUD, you've got your boost knob. Now, the thing you got to keep in mind here is that there is a boost controller in the dash, and it is capable of being turned down to 8 pounds of boost, which on 92 octane fuel, this car makes 649 horsepower, 650 pound-feet of torque. If you turn this up, you do have to run higher octane fuel. It is capable of getting you up to 14 pounds of boost. At 14 pounds of boost, the engine's output is significantly greater than the 650 horsepower that it came with at low boost. You're talking an engine here that on the dyno made 1200 horsepower. So, use your boost control cautiously. Run high octane fuel when you do, and it makes the car a little more entertaining. It is a gear limited car, so it's not a power limited car. To your right of that, you've got all of your lights that are basically idiot lights. You got an airbag light to let you know if the airbag's working or not. You've got your brake light there to make sure that you haven't done anything bad to the brake system and have a leak out there. You've got your fan in-op light, which is if the cooling fan stops working out front. You've got a low coolant light. You've got a low transmission light, which is for fluid levels in the trans, and you've got a low oil light that can come on if you start losing oil in any way, shape, or form. So, all good things to have. They're there just to protect the engine in this automobile and make sure that everything is operating perfectly. To the right of that, you have a Hobbs meter, just like you'd see in any aircraft. Mine has 159 hours on it. Cars moved, if you average it out over the 661 miles, I think it's averaged a speed of about 4 miles per hour, maybe a little tick over that. To the right of that, what you've got are your circuit breakers. This would be basically like your fuse panel in your car, and it covers all the vitals in the automobile. And so you've also got a couple of auxiliary items on there so that you can add additional items if you see fit. So that's a nice convenient feature, because immediately if something has gone awry. You can see one of those, they do extend out towards the driver a little bit and let you know if something has blown for some reason. So that covers most of the controls in the car. There's a couple of others here. You've got controls for a mirror. Yes, I know. It's a General Motors part, but it was easy to replace, easy to service, and there wasn't a tremendous amount of development money involved in utilizing that part. And you could run down to your local dealer, get it, and fix it if something went awry. So yes, there are some off-the-shelf items in this car, as we've discussed before, just depending on where Jerry felt money was best spent for giving you, what you needed to roll and function. The switches here are the same ones you'd see in a luxury automobile such as a BMW or Mercedes-Benz, etc. They are a German manufactured part. Very nice illuminated switch, very tactile feeling. They're very heavy duty, so we opted to use those as our window switches for the sub windows in the doors. And I say everything else that you see in here is pretty aircraft related. Of course, you've got all your eyeball vents around here for the HVAC system. You got a couple of eyeball vents over here, and then you've got one over on the passenger side by the door, and then of course you've got the mirror eyeball vents that you see over there that bring in fresh air from the outside if you don't feel the need to turn the air conditioning system on. Okay, so the HVAC system in the Vector kind of went along with Jerry hating everything that he had seen all of his friends have. Everybody he knew who owned a Lamborghini Countach or owned a Ferrari Testarossa or an F40, etc., never had a heat and cooling system for the interior for the passenger compartment that was good. If you get into a Countach, if you get into a Diablo, etc., and you turn their air conditioning systems on in the middle of a summer day, you're lucky if you get probably an 8 to 10 degree drop from whatever the ambient air temperature is outside to what you get on the interior of the car. With the W8, it was a full custom system that was in here for the HVAC, and the HVAC output 20,000 BTUs of heat and just about the equivalent in cooling. And this thing can, you know, pretty much heat and cool a small house, you know, and it's doing it in an interior of a car that's quite tiny. So it's very effective. It definitely will either boil you out of the car or freeze you out of the car, depending on how far you want to take it here. Whenever you're driving in the vehicle, you can drop the temperature down pretty significantly, make it quite cold in here. It is an R12 system. I have maintained this car as an R12 system. I have not done a conversion over to R134A. R134A is much less efficient and does not perform at the levels of R12. There are a lot of trade-offs between the two. While the R134 is, quote, environmentally friendly if it's released into the atmosphere, it uses PAG oil, which is a Group A carcinogen. So you flip that around with the old R12 systems, and the actual refrigerant itself depleted the ozone, but used mineral oil as a lubricant, so it was not harmful to you as an individual working with the car if you were doing any service work on it. And it's a much better material for heat transfer. So the system here has a control panel here that's in the car, and that control panel does your heat and AC. It is an automatic system, so you can set it at 72 degrees and it'll keep and hold itself there and keep you cool or warm depending on the outside ambient air temperature. So good system. System that was made more for something, you know, the size of a motorhome than it was for the interior of a small car, but very effective, very efficient, works very well. The car does have a glove compartment in it. Good sized, enough to keep your paperwork in, and you know, allow you to quickly access your insurance paperwork or your registration for the car whenever somebody pulls you over for the excessive speed that the car is capable of. And as usual, everything's, you know, nicely covered in Connelly leather. So that pretty much sums up all the items in the interior of the car. Gives you an idea of what each of them are, and also, you know, kind of an interesting look at the audio system. It's a, you know, neat system for a production car of its time. Hopefully that gives you a good layout of the land in here, and we'll summarize this one up as completing the interior at this moment in time. Oh, the other thing that I haven't talked about much, and while we're in here and I'm thinking about it, is above me is a sunroof. It is a fixed sunroof. Early cars did have a removable sunroof in them. The issue with it is at extreme high speeds, as you were getting up there, you know, above the 200 mile per hour mark, you would get wind buffeting, and so you would hear a flutter as that glass was being sucked up and out of its seal. So Jerry opted to discontinue the removable sunroof and change it over to a fixed sunroof. So it's permanently sealed in there. It's not removable. You can't really do anything with my car now. You know, a lot of the early cars do have a removable sunroof, and you can pop it in and out. As kind of a neat feature, but this is sufficient. It does a nice job, and I like the fact that when you get this car up into the higher speeds, you don't hear that buffeting in this car at all, and it's just a nice quiet ride right on up to over 200 miles per hour. So one more unique feature of the car. Another item that's kind of unique is the rear window here. It's a triple pane rear window. It's a Pyrex glass triple pane rear window. That's to deal with the exhaust system heat so close to it, and it does a great job of insulating the interior from the engine back there. You don't feel any of that heat radiating into the interior from the exhaust system on the car, and a nice neat setup. Well, hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode. If you would, hit the like, subscribe, and share buttons for us. It really would mean a lot. Trying to make a go at it out here with this car, and trying to give you guys as much information as I possibly can about it. Of course, as always, if you wouldn't mind commenting below, and I'll try and answer any questions you may have. It's you know, I want you guys to get to know this car and get to know everything about it, but I would like to know, you know, also what you would like to know about this car. Hopefully I'm covering everything as we go through it, and doing a sufficient job of it, but of course there's you know, always something I may miss or neglect to mention, and would like to make sure I cover everything. So again, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate all you guys out there, and we'll see you next time. One of the other things I forgot to cover here and figured I'd throw in here at the end was, to the left of the driver and to the passenger's right hand side, there is an ashtray in this car. This is something you don't see in a car every day, but due to the nature of this beast being sold internationally, the Japanese, you know, Indian folks, etc., a lot of them still smoke. So back when this car was manufactured, in order to cater to the world market, there is an ashtray next to the driver and to the passenger with its own cigarette lighter right next to it. And yeah, sure enough, you know, that used to be the way cars were built. You tried to cater to everybody to keep everybody happy, and well, there it is. For that dirty habit that you just can't kick, you can smoke in your Vector if you want to.